Hey everyone, this is Doug with B&H. Thank you for joining us today. We are here to talk about something very new and exciting. This is the Panasonic S1R II. It's been a while since I've seen the S1R, and I had some time with it last week. It's fantastic to use. We made a little commercial with it. I suggest you take a look at our YouTube channel to check out our video. We just put it out today. So anyway, we're here to talk about some of the new features of the camera. We have a lot to discuss, and I have two wonderful guests with me today. So why don't you just introduce yourselves?
Oh, thanks for having me, Doug. I'm Shiv Verma. I'm one of the ambassadors for Panasonic Lumix cameras. And I've had the pleasure of using this baby for the last 10 days. Absolutely loved it. Looking forward to talking more about it.
That's awesome. That's longer than I had it, so good for you.
I'm Sean with Lumix USA. I'm one of the marketing team members, social media, photographer as well. And yeah, I've had a few months with the camera.
See, I've always wanted to be involved in the development process. That must be cool.
Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah. All right, well, so thank you for joining us. For the audience out there, in case you're just hearing about this, because it did just come out today, let's go over some key specs just before we get into the questions. We have a full-frame mirrorless 44.3 megapixel sensor here. It produces 8.1K video at its highest resolution, and it looks fantastic, I got to tell you. We have things like a 40 FPS continuous shooting mode. There's phase detect autofocus on here, which wasn't in the previous version. There's so much to talk about, and honestly, I have a feeling we're not going to get to cover all of it, but we're going to try. So let's just jump right into the photo side of things. I'm very video-centric myself. I did take some photos with the camera, but I really wanted to hear from a photographer first and foremost. So it is very definitively a hybrid camera in terms of what it can do. What would you say, Shiv, are some of the most, what were the features you were looking towards using the most?
So I think, one of the things that one's looking for in a full-frame camera is its ability to perform in low-light situations, in situations where the type of photography that I do, most of it is landscapes and wildlife. So I'm looking for a highly responsive camera, both from its ability to capture high-speed, frames, also to capture low light, because I do a lot of night photography. I've been a time-lapse shooter all my life, but I like doing nighttime time-lapses. So that, to me, was one of the key features. Will it do well in low-light situations at 44 megapixels? Will there be low noise? Will there be performance, issues, which, to be honest with you, I didn't find. There were no issues whatsoever. The thing that I am most impressed with is its ability to do image stabilization without any cropping, its ability to shoot at 40 frames a second in burst mode, and the ability to do pre-burst, which for a wildlife photographer is absolutely critical. So some of those features are really what are exciting, and as far as I'm concerned, there's little that the camera doesn't do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing, because we shot basically like commercial agency style work, and I was thinking it runs the gamut. It really does. You have the video side of it, but we also have the high resolution detail and the continuous shooting rates that you need. What kind of subjects did you capture? So
over the past 10 days, I was in Norway, and so most of it was landscapes. There's not a whole lot of wildlife except the people, the Vikings. You couldn't call them wild. They are pretty. So I did have some opportunity with a few birds, etc., but nothing really significant. Landscapes, auroras, we were very lucky. People go to Norway and never see the aurora. We had 4 nights of solid aurora out of the 8 that we were in that location, so that was fabulous. But overall, the other feature that really was most impressive is the fact that this camera is truly now, out of all the Panasonic cameras, can be used outdoors without any problem, changing lenses, etc. The shutter closes when you turn the camera off. You can now pop a lens on, pop a lens off, and not really worry that the sensor is going to get contaminated. And the way the sensor shutter closes, it's really good. I mean, changing lenses over the 10-day period, I got one dust spot. Typically, I think I would have ended up with 50, 100 spots and clean the camera every night.
Yeah.
So it's those small things that make a difference. I mean, it makes your life so much easier to be out there in the field and to be able to do what you do without worrying.
Right. Right. I hadn't actually thought really about like the ruggedness of it, like using it in an outdoor setting. No, I mean that's exactly why I'm asking you, is because we did everything very like controlled.
Oh no,
So,
no. I was out there in pouring rain with this camera, no rain cover. That was intentional. In snow. I mean, I have images, unfortunately, that the snow actually got the lens covered with snow spots, but they were not dust spots.
Right.
And but the camera never died. I mean, so
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. I just wanted to ask before we get into some technicals, is there a feature you feel is underutilized or sort of underrated when it comes to this camera? Or I guess previous S series too.
So the way I say it, cameras have a lot of features. Okay, there's a ton of features, and some of the features are photographer dependent. I mean, based on what type of photography you do. Features like the ability for the camera to do a time lapse, assemble the video, and show you the video, right, is a huge advantage. I mean, now yes, I've got what I wanted. I can move on and do something instead of saying, oh, maybe I've got what I wanted. Tomorrow morning after I assemble it, I'll be able to see. And oh, by the way, I will never have another chance again.
Oh,
so
the regret.
The regret. I mean, so it takes that away.
Yeah.
Features like the ability to do bracketing, not just exposure bracketing that we're also familiar with. I don't want to have to do manually set focus points to do a focus stack. Let the camera do it. So features like that, people need to start utilizing and maximizing and making the most of it.
Yeah.
You want a high resolution image. I mean, I don't know how many photographers today do anything but social media. But if you want to take images that you want to make poster-sized prints out of, or larger, or murals, well, then use the functions that the camera provides you. I mean, the camera is great at doing high resolution. We're looking at 44.3 megapixels that translates to 177 megapixels. That is huge.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, feature functionality is there to be used. Shame on the photographer who doesn't use it.
All right, you said it, not me. All right,
I didn't say
it. I'm glad that you brought up resolution, though, because I wanted to ask Sean in the next question. It has to be said, and I think only because there's going to be someone out there who says it. And I know that it doesn't really matter that much. But technically, we're going here from 47.3 to 44.3 megapixels.
Yes.
Resolution is not everything, contrary to what we just discussed. So what was the design goal? And I know to some extent, what some of the extra benefits are, but what were the real design goals when it came to the sensor design, apart from resolution?
Yeah, so, looking at the kind of lineage of what we've been doing with our cameras for, I'd say the better part of like the last 5 years, right? As we started moving into the phase autofocus world, the preparation into that, we look at the right balance of what a sensor's resolution offers, because, it's not everything, but it is a part of it. But more importantly, what kind of build structure is that sensor itself? How is its performance for saturation to get the best dynamic range we can? How does it actually resolve at higher ISO values? Is it going to be something where it's a very heavily processed, high ISO performance, or is it going to be able to retain a lot more with our engines and all that kind of stuff? So, as going through the whole concept, that basically gave us a point with the R camera, because many remember when the R came out, it was a very photo-forward version of our lineup. This is kind of a reimagining of where, one, everything is evolved. It's hybrid. I mean, we use that word for almost everything, but Hybrid itself is kind of where the R within our ecosystem fits these days. So that meant we need to find a high enough resolution. It needs to have that good dynamic range that we looked at. It needs to have reasonable readout speeds and rolling shutters for the various different use cases.
Right.
And it's got to be something that actually kind of makes sense to fit in both worlds. There are higher resolution sensors out there, but they're not the best in video. Then there are lower resolution sensors, which we kind of already have covered. That's what S5 II and 2X are for. You've got the 24 megapixels there. This sensor was kind of like one of those Goldilocks areas for us, and
it
hit all the metrics. We don't have the negatives of worse dynamic range because necessarily you go for speed over all that. It's just a crazy good sensor.
Yeah, no, I mean, I put it through some paces last week, and rolling shutter, actually, now that you mention it, was one of them. I wouldn't say I did it a super thorough test, but I was definitely trying to, like whip pan several times across different subjects or across like straight lines to see what the result would be.
So real world tests.
Yes.
So can I add to this conversation?
Please.
The one thing that I found with the sensor, and I've used the S1R and now the S1R II. With this smaller size sensor, although not much smaller, I'm getting a full stop of improvement in low light performance.
Oh, okay.
So what I would typically shoot at 3200 ISO, I'm comfortably shooting at 1600 ISO. 3.2 seconds for typical nighttime aurora time lapse. No issue whatsoever. Brilliant color performance and absolutely no noise.
That's amazing.
So,
No,
try
it
it,
is.
you
It
like
is.
it.
It is. I mean, we had to crank up a few times because we were shooting in higher frame rates at times, and so we had to compensate for it. And I'm pretty sure I had the dual ISO in auto, so it kept the changeover for me.
Yeah.
There is a part of me that wants to test the difference, but presumably at the higher circuit, the gain circuit, it kept up. It was barely noisier in the resulting video. I barely noticed the difference. So that actually leads me to ask, Shiv, did you shoot any video with the camera?
A little bit, not a whole lot. I mean, the environment wasn't really conducive for a lot of video.
Right.
But I did do some just to ascertain how it performs. And I can't say I'm a videographer, but for what I did, I was.
That's okay. I'm not really much of a photographer.
Yeah. but there's a couple of things that do come into play. Is that even with photography, you are looking at fast-moving subjects, and at times you do have an impact of that rolling shutter. Panning through something that is moving across vertical lines and stuff of that sort. The amount of rolling shutter impact was not negative. So I clearly see a definite enhancement as far as the readout speeds are concerned. I don't know from a measurement point of view what they are, but it does make a big difference. And you can see that between the S5 and the S1R Mark II. Definitely there is an improvement.
Yeah, for sure. We had a dancer on set for our video, and in two regards, actually, did the camera really keep up well. One was rolling shutter, like you said, like it kept up with her movements very, very well. And then autofocus, which was really kind of blowing my mind at times. From the default, we did have to change things a little bit, but we had to bump the sensitivity up and the speed at which it moved the autofocus, but it kept up way better than I expected it to. And we were talking about this off camera before, but the speed at which it detects the eye and the face for human subjects in particular is really something else. And she was doing a lot of like twirls where her face would be obscured, so technically the camera is going back to body at that point. Yeah. But it's seamless. The result itself
But it takes over
seamless.
the eye as soon as the eye comes into view. Boom! It's grabbed it. So, Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, there are those things that we were missing before that you should have no complaints now. But it is a question that I have to ask.
Go on.
I mean, this thing is so exciting. The best of the best physical things in this camera is the rear LCD.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the ability to position it wherever you want. You want to do high shots, you got it. You want to do low shots, you got it. You want to twirl it around, you got it. I mean, that capability, I mean, articulation was good, but this is absolutely out of this world. And, you know, I was doing stuff by the side of the road, hoping not to get run over, where I could actually put the camera down on the ground and not worry that I wouldn't be able to see and understand, you know, where I was focusing and what I was capturing. Is it level? Is it not? I don't think there's another camera that can do it.
There's something to be said for how versatile it is, and you know, since it is. I actually hadn't really thought too much about using the tilt and free angle for photography because we were using it on a gimbal a lot. And in that situation, we had a USB-C cable right on the side behind where, if it didn't have that ability, the screen would get in the way, especially once you rotated it 90 degrees. This kind of backs you out into that. So that kind of leads me back to you, Sean. So yeah, this is hybrid, and it is, you were talking about like what the R is now, and it is kind of interesting, like what we ask now of these mirrorless camera bodies.
Oh, yeah.
The position that they're in on all these sets. What was, I guess, some of the filmmaker and videographer feedback that was taken into account when designing the S1R II?
Yeah, so, you know, there's different aspects for filmmaking and videography, right? There's, you know, the wedding videographer that's going to have their specific set of, you know, needs. There's the cinematographer and the filmmaker that's, you know, dying for a true 24p option in the camera. Like, because there are so many different aspects of it, our engineering team and our team, like when we're surveying and kind of like figuring out what kind of settings, what modes, what options we want to have, all kind of looked at it and found where a lot of the kind of overlap was with it. So that ends up being, you know, stuff where people are like, they really want 8K. Because, well, one, if you're going to go to a sensor this kind of resolution, why not put 8K in it?
Yeah.
There are benefits for it, especially with like recropping and downsampling. Yeah, cameras are there, sensors are fast enough for it. So yeah, of course we're going to put 8K in this, and we'll do 8.1K so we can get the 17:9 ratio, that kind of thing. But knowing that open gate filmmaking is something that has been, I would argue we've been at the forefront of, you know, really making it accessible for people.
I 100% agree.
It made sense with this sensor and the setup, knowing that hybrid is what we're looking for, a photographer's perspective and a videographer and a filmmaker's perspective, to enhance what we can do in open gate recording. I mean, let's face it, you're paying $300 for the body. You should be able to use all the pixels that are on the sensor. So out of the gate, you know, that informed us to say, okay, well, out of the gate, we can do 6.4K, open gate up to 30p. That's in a 420 color subsampling. That means that you've got, one, a higher resolution open gate than we have in any of the other cameras currently. But we will be bringing that 8.1K, the 7.2K open gate options that are going to be there.
Nice.
Because while, yes, resolution, because this goes back to that resolution conversation, yes, resolution's a big point, and for some videographers, yeah, that is like the point for them. It's about how you deploy those different options on the camera. If we can do the 8.1K, we're going to do it. But then also understanding that hybrid users are going to want, you know, the sharpest video for wedding and event. Or maybe not the sharpest, maybe that's a bad way to put it. They want the most detailed, cleanest, most detailed option you get. So that informed us with 4K 60p, making sure that that's a downsampled 4K 60p, not line skipped and binned, because you want sharpness, not weird aliasing or weird kind of, you know, softness to it. That's another reason why we went with a 44 megapixel sensor instead of higher. So as far as the video aspect goes with it, figuring out which resolutions work best, which combinations of them, whether or not it's a downsampled, whether or not it can be downsampled, all dictated how this became a proper hybrid with us. And yes, there's an argument for people that are like, I want a photo-only camera, or I want a photo-first camera. The reality is, I don't think you're going to see cameras like that anymore these days, because the photography options, they're still there.
Yeah.
Still have high res, still have live view composite. This has the return of multi-exposure in our cameras. 44 megapixel, 10 frames, list goes on and on. They're there. Just because it's got video doesn't mean it's not having those things.
Of
so
course.
I understand that. But this being a full hybrid camera, and I think I moved way off the question that you gave me.
No. I mean, I just wanted to know feedback, but like you've kind of addressed it, and the reality is, yes, the world has changed in terms of what like these cameras can do, what they're expected to do, and speaking just from my perspective, at least, I love how flexible the sensor is. Like it's one of my, I think that beyond anything else is like my favorite thing, because yeah, I do want to use the whole sensor, and once that 8.1K open gate does hit, I'm gonna use it. Actually, would it technically be 8.1?
Yes.
Okay, it would be. Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna use it, and I mean, for me personally, this is just like a weird, I guess, use case. I think I was mostly doing it just to see if I could. Is one of the common things you hear with this, with 3x2 shooting, is you can easily crop for horizontal or vertical composition. Very common use these days. But I wanted to see, could you use it to do like a complete 360-degree rotation of the full frame within a 16:9 or 17:9 frame? It turns out you can.
Oh,
it
yeah.
only takes 103%. So just the slightest punch in to do that. If you gave me the 8.1K though, I wouldn't need to do that.
So you're doing like some 60s Batman era,
Yes, exactly.
wipes and stuff on there, like.
Not that fast, but thank you for the idea, because now I'm going to do that.
Hey,
Now you can try it.
at Lumix, we give you that flexibility.
Exactly. Cool. So, Shiv, just jumping back for a bit, you're an educator in the field, right?
Yeah.
And I
Hopefully.
just wanted to ask, since we're talking about like how much these cameras have changed in terms of what they do, how do you think that impacts people getting into photography nowadays? Like what kind of, I guess, technologies should they be, or techniques really, should they be really taking advantage of, or considering when they get into this that maybe a few years ago they wouldn't have really had to keep an eye on?
I'm glad you asked this question, because if you look at what's happening out there, right? Photography is everywhere. It's totally ubiquitous. You've got 6-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 70-year-olds. Everybody is now taking pictures, right? They got iPhones, Android phones, whatever. But it's a transition. They are now beginning to realize the value of being able to capture images. And with that realization comes a point in time when it says, how did that person do that? And, oh, my phone can't do it.
Yeah.
And so will we see now a new transition from those people who have this carry-in-my-pocket camera to, I need to be able to do what John did and what Tom did, and because they can only do so much. Yeah, they can take video. Can they take good video? Doubt it. Can they take good photographs? Can they do a stack? Can they do a good macro? Can they do... And when you start asking those questions, you start realizing that I am happy that everybody uses a phone, because tomorrow they'll realize that their limitations can only be overcome with cameras like this. And this is not an expensive tool. Okay? It doesn't have to be the S1R Mark II. It can be the G9, but it'll be a camera once again. And people will transition away from the so-called, I can take pictures. And, you know, the Uncle Bob who took your wedding photos will now go back to using a camera and realize that he better hire a photographer.
We're getting into some real existential career questions here.
And that's when cameras like this come into play. You know, funnily, I have to respond to a question that I was watching the launch event today, and there was a question about battery life. And I know that probably the battery life of this camera has not been published per se, but from experience, and I regretted not taking a V-mount battery pack with me to Norway for my time lapses. I had a battery in the camera that I had been using for the afternoon. It was still in the camera, I used it at night, and I shot a sequence of over 500 images at 3.2 seconds exposure with a 4-second interval, and there was enough battery left to shoot the next day.
Amazing.
So 500 sequential images with no external battery.
Wow.
Does that help you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so...
I mean, I can report it lasted us the whole day. I had one battery.
Yep.
I only briefly had it on the gimbal charging for like, you know, half an hour or so.
Yeah, but I mean, I had no charging
lasted.
capability.
That's amazing.
And that too in sub-zero temperatures. So you know, batteries die in sub-zero
that changes things a bit.
This thing was just absolutely amazing.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So that actually does make me... we have a question that came in. Since now you're talking about much colder temperatures, but someone's asking, will this camera overheat in the tropics? Is there a rating?
So yeah, with all of our cameras, you know, we rate them from, in this case, -10°C to 40°C. So it's about 104 Fahrenheit. This camera doesn't have any hard time limitations for thermals on that. You still have the ability to go in and say you want to run standard thermal monitoring or high thermal monitoring. It's fully going to come down to the environment that you're in. You will get a warning under certain circumstances, and depending on, you know, whether or not you're doing some of the harder recording options there, where it will give you the warning on the screen, and then if it ever does get to that point, it'll close the recording and save it out, and you just got to wait a few minutes and let it cool off. In fact, you'll hear the fan ramp up so that it can get that heat out of the body faster. But it's also one of the reasons why with this camera, like, we have the battery grip, and we have that ability for external SSD recording. Modern cameras with this, as far as thermals go, because, you know, you might be using CF Express cards, they get very hot.
I've noticed that.
Like, very hot.
Yeah,
Whether it's an A-type or a B-type, they get very hot. And those can be some of the highest heat generating components in the cameras. It's not necessarily the sensors or the processors anymore. So anyone that's going to be recording, say, like in the tropics or any kind of, like, or down where I am, I'm down in Austin now, I would be recording most likely longer clips out to an SSD. Like, I'll use either, you know, just standard USB 1 out here, or I'll use something like Condor Blue Handle with the Pro Blade mags.
I love those.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I will always have the grip with it. The grip does power sharing between the body and the grip, which also, again, reduces thermal load in the camera. It allows me to hot swap it. And moving out of using the CF Express card to an SSD means I'm taking that thermal load out of the camera as well. So you've got tons of ways to work around different environments with the camera. But remember, it's a hybrid camera. It's not a cinema camera. It's a hybrid camera.
Right.
You know, like our GH7, that's a fully unlimited recording in pretty much any environment you can throw the thing in. That's a very video-focused camera. The S1H was a very video-focused camera. This one, I'd say like 99% of the... well, let me be a little more realistic. I'd say I run in 90% of the environments that, you know, a hybrid user's going to work with this.
Right.
They're going to be fine with it.
I mean, personally, I didn't run into that issue. I didn't
Yeah.
see any warnings, and it didn't feel that hot to me.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I was shooting 8K most of the day.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, it was definitely taxing, I guess you could say, but
Oh,
not in a bad way. Actually, since we were talking about the USB-C with the output, can it do power delivery input and USB-C for data SSD?
Yeah. So we get that question a lot with this because there's only one USB-C port on the camera.
Right.
So it can only do one or the other at a given time. So if you want to charge the camera or you're powering it for a longer term recording, then it's power into it. And that's making sure you have 9-volt, 3-amp USB PD banks. If you're going to be recording to an SSD, that's where we have the DCC-18, which is the little dummy battery piece for it, that just replaces this but gives you a USB-C pigtail.
Gotcha.
That's what I would recommend in cases like that, but also I know I'm hyping the grip up, but I also like a kind of more full-bodied body on this thing. But I would recommend it because at that point you will always have a fallback redundant camera or battery in the camera. This can be plugged in, running it, you're offloading cooling, all that stuff. Yeah, if you're in video, you should make sure you have a DCC-18 with the camera so that you've got no problems or basically no issue with power.
But you can do the same thing without the battery grip. You can put a dummy battery in the body and do USB out.
Yeah. So in longer-term video recording, making sure you have one in the camera, though, it gives you that backup in case that cable gets pulled or someone kicks the thing out or your battery bank dies.
Right.
I've had that happen before.
Me too.
Oh,
sadly. I'm going to ask just one more question before I jump back to you, Shiv. Is where was it here? Oh, does the SSD improve multi-shot buffering? And actually, that's another question, sort of, that I want to ask myself: is can you shoot still images to the SSD?
Oh yeah.
I didn't even know.
100%.
Okay, that's actually interesting.
Yeah. So as far as like the buffer, so like being able to clear the buffer, which I believe is what this person's asking. So the buffer, whether you use CF Express or SD or an SSD, the buffer clearing speed is the buffer clearing speed. I think it's a common misconception with modern cameras, or actually I think any camera out there, that your card speed necessarily affects how fast the buffer clears. They're always going to be limited by whatever memory and stuff is used within the cameras to then offload to those cards.
Right.
And it's specifically for photo. So it's not necessarily like if you're an electronic shutter going to give you a faster offload. It will maximize whatever the throughput is that we have within this camera, which I'm sorry, I don't have that number.
It's okay.
I don't know anyone that publishes numbers like that in their cameras. But yeah, I still recommend, even in photography, use CF Express. SSD, it's a 10 gig port, but it maxes out, I think, for whatever the maximum like normal use case is for a 10 gig port on a camera.
Right.
So it knows that it can do like 4.2 gigabit for the raw video recording out over that.
Right.
That'd be the maximum.
Right. And I would use a proper USB high-speed cable to go to the SSD, because if you use
definitely.
The slower cables, it will slow it down.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So this is what I wanted to come back to is, did you use a lot of the burst mode, the 40 FPS a lot?
Oh, yes. I used a lot of burst mode. Not necessarily for wildlife, but I was using burst mode just to try it out. And I found it, the buffer clearing fine and didn't have any lagging per se. Pre-burst, a lot of fun. And what I really like is the ability to section your pre-burst into either half a second, 1 second, or 1.5 seconds. So if I know that I'm anticipating something that is potentially going to take longer, I can backtrack, because pre-burst allows me to backtrack for a longer duration. So that was a lot of fun. A lot of fun doing that, yeah.
That's saved me a few times. That's honestly the pre-capture.
Yes, for the type of photography I do, that saves me a lot of times.
Yeah. How'd you find autofocus with it?
I mean...
With the burst modes, specifically.
So I've found that, starting with the S5, the autofocus has really become good. With this, the autofocus is excellent, but what is even better is the tracking. Okay. So, I mean, it's a combination of the two features. Straight autofocus, both autofocus single, autofocus continuous. I don't see it struggling anymore. And then, if you're looking at tracking, it does a great job. So, is it far superior to what we had before? It's hard to say. Once I do some more, quote, wildlife stuff, I'll be able to let you know. But
Wildlife stuff.
I know that the quote.
My family doesn't run fast enough for me.
I know that the quote unquote like transformation of the autofocus really goes into the S5 II, but we've definitely seen some progress here. I didn't get my hands on the S5 II and 2X, so I can't speak from that. Going by generations. But the way that this kept up with the subject we had was just beyond impressive. And we did, not just in video, but also in some bursts, because we did some isolated movements just to see how it would follow.
Yep.
I think I only missed one of them, where it drifted, but everything else it held on, and I was just kind of shocked.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that larger subjects, I feel, are a little easier to handle.
For sure.
When you're looking at tiny birds, that's when the real test happens. And I can say that I didn't have too many birds, but there was this thing called a Eurasian mockingbird that was a lot of fun to shoot, and this did not have any issue. Nice. And I was using a 70-200
I was just going to ask
as the lens, but no issue whatsoever.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What's your next project?
I'm looking forward to Tanzania.
Ooh, okay. Very nice, very nice. All right, so I think we have maybe one more question. Okay, here we go. I got one more question, and I did mean to try this out myself, so I apologize to the viewer out there. High-res handheld photos, how does it work? I really did want to test this because the fact that... Was this the first one that can do it handheld?
No.
I didn't think so.
This is, no, this isn't the first one. This is the highest resolution.
Is it, like algorithmically, is it improved?
Yeah. So, for those that don't know, our handheld high-res, because we have such a powerful stabilization for magnetic system here, it shifts the sensor for, I think it's 8 images, and then it uses the motion of the gyros in the lens and the camera and everything, even with your hand motions, to counteract all that and then stitch it together. The GH7 was the first one that was GH7 or GH6 that GH6 was the first one that launched it with the kind of like better motion correction.
Right.
And then as we've been adding it, we firmware added that to the S5 Mark II and the Mark IIX, got it into this in day one. Everything always gets better and better with it. And with our high-res mode, it's a standard RW2 file. It's not a special file that you have to wait for software edition.
That's actually really good to know.
Yeah, it's also done in camera, so you know that you got it, and you can still do a standard 44 megapixel image with it. It's a easy system, and I personally really like the image quality out of it. I encourage people to try it.
If you get too much shake, or if your hands really not very steady and there's too much shake, as soon as the image capture is complete, as it starts processing the image, it'll tell you that it's failed because there's been too much. And I like that because you can now shoot it again. Instead of, it's done, and then you come back and
go back.
oh no, So it's a feature that from a helps to know did you or didn't you get it, and it does.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there's a little bar that goes across and says done or failed.
I haven't used it since I think like the original G9 or something. Like
which is tripod only.
Yeah,
I actually remember that because I think that was a stream that I came here and you and I sat down and talked about it.
So I did mean to try it because I thought it would be really cool to kind of revisit that and see how far it's come since then.
Yeah.
But next time.
The S1R, the S1R
The original?
did a beautiful job. But it didn't tell you it failed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Just out of curiosity for that, is there a duration for that, for those all of those shutters? Is it just the duration of each shutter actuation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're shooting faster shutter speeds, it's going to capture each of those images faster. If you're doing longer exposure, you're going to have it, much longer there. But yeah, it's pretty simple. I think you can go down to 8 seconds as far as the longest exposure goes.
Oh,
so
wow.
you can use it
8
for
seconds?
for longer trail stuff. Pair that with an ND on there, and you can be doing simulating really long exposure, even in bright daylight.
I need to try
fun.
this. Yeah, I need to try this. Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go on.
No, go for it.
So we're almost at the end here. Is there anything I forgot to mention? Is there any feature that I think people might overlook?
Yes.
Okay.
Another one I love. Do you see the port covers?
Yes.
Individual port covers. You're not exposing ports if you
That
don't
is
need
great.
them.
That is great.
I mean, I look at it from, an outdoor person, out in the dirt, out in the worst of weather conditions. You start exposing those ports, stuff's going to get in. Now you only expose the one that you're going to use, so it's covered. Yeah, so that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I feel like you were jumping at something.
Yeah, some of the stuff I think, going a little bit further back to about the hybrid nature of this, right? Everyone's always going to look at, I think us, Panasonic and Lumix in general, as, we're very well known for videography and our video features. But making sure that we focus on workflow for photographers and for videographers is also one of the kind of side things with this camera. So photographers world, native Capture One support from day one. We finally have Capture One tethering in a Lumix camera.
It works as of today.
Yeah. As of today, you can download it and it'll work. I mean, no one else has the cameras, but not yet, soon. So that's a really exciting thing on the photography side. And photographers out there, yes, we are listening to you. We check out all the other cool photo features we have as well. But now we have Capture One with you. But even on the video side, we launched a new app with this camera, the Lumix Flow app, which is an entire video production workflow app that you don't actually even have to own a Lumix camera to use.
I didn't get to check that out.
Yeah. The whole concept of it is being able to storyboard your shoot, create a script, set up your shot lists with it. You can plug it in right into your camera and launch Lumix Flow, whether you're iOS or Android. It acts as a monitor for you on your phone. But while you're capturing those scenes...
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. While you're capturing each of those scenes and you're going through your shot list and you've got it, once you run that clip, it will then prompt you and say, is this a good clip, a bad clip? Do you need to review it later?
Log everything.
You mark them as you're shooting. And then once you're done with the shoot, it'll kick out an XML file for you. So then take everything, load it on the computer. I'm explaining XML files for the people out there that already know this and are like, I know this. Why are you saying that? But for those that don't know, it kicks out the XML file. You load it into Resolve or Premiere. And it just organizes everything as if how you had it set up in the app.
Wow, okay.
And like I said, you don't need a Lumix camera for it. We have a smartphone mode in it as well. So if you want to start working with it, if you want to get yourself in that habit of how to properly storyboard, how to keep your scenes in order, how to keep your shot lists in order, you can do that and use your phone's camera as well. So
I'm glad I asked.
Something else to play with, right?
Yeah.
We're so into the point now where I think hardware-wise, cameras have gotten, especially within our lineup, I think we're in a really comfortable spot with, where image quality is, where resolution is. We're starting to see smaller and smaller gaps between versions of cameras. The next frontier for everybody is fixing workflow, making it more accessible for people to be able to get their images out of their cameras. That's why we did Lab, like Lumix Lab originally. No one else, I'm comfortable in saying this, no one else in this industry has a faster way of getting your images off your camera onto your phone for any of us, I think. And now we're into the workflow side. We've got Capture One for the photographer's workflow side, and it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I mean, like you said, the gaps are smaller, and I honestly struggle nowadays with the more cameras come. I'm just like, what is left? like feature-wise, what is left? And you know, I'm still surprised here and there, but it's like,
Oh yeah.
it's really just crazy how far they have come
Don't
technologically.
ask a photographer as to what's left. He's going to tell you there's a lot left.
Oh, there's
yeah.
always something. There's always something.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
a lot left, yes.
But you know, you do this for, you know, it doesn't even take that many years, but like, you see the progression of technology,
Yeah.
and you can see. My first camera was a DVX 100.
Oh, I remember.
So like, you know, I've been comfortable with Panasonic for very long. I've known about it for a while, and to see that, like, you know, it's here. This is where we're at. Like, it's the perspective is very breathtaking.
The evolution of the first stream that I did here with you on the GH5, I think,
Oh,
where you know, we're talking about how awesome it was, or maybe it was the 4, how great it was that 4K was coming to the
Yeah.
industry, and now look at us, we're
Yeah.
8K, we're open gate,
Yeah.
faster frame rates. It's crazy. It's an awesome time to be in the industry, I think.
definitely. So I think we're gonna wrap it up here. And yeah, a lot to still uncover. Honestly, I'm definitely gonna check out the Flow
Oh
app.
yeah.
So thank you both for joining me. And I hope all of you at home enjoyed watching. And please check out our video on our YouTube channel where we talk about the Panasonic Lumix S1R II in pretty good detail. So thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.